Hi everyone. I wanted to do a screencast about how Levure is leveraging some new features in LiveCode 9. In LiveCode 9, LiveCode Builder was enhanced with a foreign function interface, or FFI. And the foreign function interface allows LiveCode to create a bridge between Objective-C, Java, and C, and bring libraries that weren't originally written for LiveCode into LiveCode. So in the past, this was possible with the externals interface, but that was a bit of a pain to write with, and I don't know that you could do Java with it, at least not in a straightforward way. But this foreign function interface is really quite cool, and I've been playing with it a lot over the last few months. And through some of the tests and things that I've done, I actually ended up implementing some LCB libraries that call out to Objective-C and to the Windows API in order to add some new functionality. So I just wanted to show you some of the work I'd done. Maybe it'll inspire you to get into LCB and FFI and start wrapping some libraries and making some cool new things available to the LiveCode community. So the first thing I did was in the preferences helper that comes with Levure. Originally, you couldn't. So on OS 10 and on iOS, so Mac OS and iOS, Apple has a set of APIs called NS user defaults. And that's the approved way of writing to like the plist files that you store your preferences in. And the operating system, like on Mac OS, it will store information about your application windows. If you use some third-party applications, they'll store preferences in there. And so it's really a good idea to use this NS user defaults API to store your preferences. And on iOS, Levure was not able to do that. There was an external that you could use for Mac OS, but for iOS there wasn't a solution. So in the current version of Levure, if you look at the preferences helper YAML file, you'll see that there's the external, which has been a part of the helper on Mac OS. But there's also been this addition of an nsuserdefaults.lcm file, and so that's a module it's an LCB module that's been compiled, and that is now what is used for writing preferences on Mac OS and iOS when you're using Levure. And you'll notice there's this engine version tag in here. That just tells Levure that if you're using a version of LiveCode less than 9.0, then use the preferences external. But if you're using LiveCode 9.0 or later, then use the LCB file. So that's just some branching that goes on there. So let's look inside the nsuserdefaults.lcb file. And what you'll see here is a lot of, I mentioned that it's the foreign function interface. You'll see a lot of definitions in here, like let's say private foreign handler. And whenever you see a private foreign handler, then that creates a bridge to an API call in another library somewhere. In this case, when you're working with Objective-C, you can refer to the standard objects that come with Mac OS. Without you don't have to really clarify where they're found. The LCB just knows where to find them. So we have NS objects, and there are NS user defaults. And so you see there's these private foreign handlers. These are all these definitions, and it might look like a lot of code here, but it's really once you kind of understand the syntax for. There's these lines called these binds to. So you have a private foreign handler that has some parameters. It returns something, and then it binds to. The binding, that's what tells LiveCode where to, the definition for that handler and how it should call out to it. But once you figure that out, really wrapping Objective-C is pretty straightforward. And then what you do is you write these functions that tell LiveCode Builder that, okay, if you call this function, then go out and look in this library and make this bridge. And then within your LiveCode Builder code, you can make calls to it. Here's a call to one. Here's another call. But you can then write these functions in LiveCode Builder. So that are accessible from your LiveCode code, your LiveCode script. So in preferences.livecode script, this is the library that you as developers interface with when you're using Levure. You can see, this is a call to the LCB library, and then you'll find these NS user defaults calls sprinkled throughout. As a developer, you're just calling like the established API for the preferences helper, and under the hood, it can the preferences library makes the calls to the LiveCode Builder module as necessary. So that was the first thing that I implemented in Levure, was the support for for the preferences API on iOS, and then now we're using an updated library for macOS as well, rather than the external. The other thing that I've done, bring this window over, is I recently did, I've had an application updater that I've been using for years, and I had an old version of Sparkle, which is an Objective-C library on macOS that's kind of a standard way of updating applications on macOS. I'd had an old version of that, but I decided to go through and wrap the latest version of Sparkle, and then also wrap what's called WinSparkle, which is kind of a Windows port of Sparkle, and I wrapped that up as well, and put those in. I created a standard interface, so you have appupdater.livecode script, and what that does is that provides some library commands like initializing an app updater, running an app updater, checking for updates in the background. So there's these calls that are made, and under the hood, depending on the platform that you're on, calls are made out to this LiveCode Builder module, whether it's for Sparkle or Windows or WinSparkle. And you can see that in the helper.yml file, you can see that there's these extensions, and on Mac OS we get Sparkle, and then on Windows we use WinSparkle. And this is pretty similar to if you look at to the preferences, the NS user defaults library that I just showed you. You have this private foreign handler, it returns, it binds to something. The Sparkle one is a little more complicated in that it makes use of delegates. So there's these callbacks, and when you get, down in the code down here, then you learn how you can use delegates in LiveCode Builder, and so you can get these callbacks. So let's scroll down. This is where you define all the callbacks, and so then these callbacks get sent. So like this is a callback that the Sparkle framework will send, and when it sends the callback to the LCB file, then the LCB file will then dispatch that to LiveCode script. Windows is same idea. You're binding to the WinSparkle DLL, and then same idea. There's some calls that are functions that are defined that can then be called from LiveCode script. So now there's a really easy to implement auto update helper available for Levure. And it's just, there's a couple of configuration options that you need to put into your app.yml file. And once you've done that, then the auto updaters, there's instructions for, where you need to upload things. But the auto updaters will make use of your existing Windows installer. If you're using the INO setup helper, then it's really easy to create a Windows installer. If you're using drop DMG to create your DMG file, the Sparkle can just use that DMG file that you've uploaded, and so people can you can help your customers stay up to date without a lot of work. So this new foreign function interface in LiveCode 9 is really impressive, and it's getting better all the time. This code is the code that I put together for these auto updaters and for preferences are up on they're up on GitHub, so you can take a look at the code and use it to start your own projects. I also will post some links in the description to I have some GitHub projects repos for kind of just a macOS tool set. It's just a repo where I do a lot of experimenting with interfacing with different Objective-C APIs, and I've started a Windows one. It's still pretty rudimentary, but it provides some good example code if you're looking at how to do some different things. So hopefully this LiveCode builder and the foreign function interface is something you'll want to take a look at and start playing with. If not, then at the very least you can benefit from the new functionality that we can add to our LiveCode projects that can be added to these Levure helpers to make your app development better and simpler. Without you won't have to do as much work on your side. You can just kind of leverage what other people have done. And that is it for today. Thanks for watching.